Hello YouTube and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to show how I converted my Syma X8C quadcopter to work with brushless motors. As you can see here, I don't have the stock motors anymore, but rather nice, powerful brushless motors. I really kind of like the way I did this. I've seen other videos online, people that have converted these over to brushless power, and almost all of them have the motors basically just screwed right on top of the plastic here, sticking out. And you know, the problem with that, besides the fact that I think it looks kind of silly, is if you get in a crash, I mean, there's not much there to protect it. Now, I decided to go through this process and make it so that the motors fit inside the shell, and it was a lot of work, but I was able to get it done pretty easily. There's a lot of steps involved, but it's something that pretty much anybody can do if you know what parts to put into it, and a video like this where I'm going to explain exactly how I did it should help out quite a bit. So let's get started. Looking at the outside of the aircraft here, probably the first thing you're going to notice, besides that I have a camera on the front here that is not the stock Syma camera, is I also have a pretty massive battery underneath here. This is a Fluorion 11.1 volt 3 cell 5500 milliamp battery, so it's pretty darn big. It's actually has a higher capacity than you would see on something like a Phantom 3. So it's a really massive battery. I could definitely run a smaller battery and probably get better performance out of this aircraft, but I kind of like the big battery. It gives it some weight and stability in the air. And I get flight times that are easily over 12 minutes every time, and that's with landing it with some power still left in it, not completely depleting it. Probably another thing you're going to notice by looking at it here is you'll see that the shell on this aircraft is kind of bowed out here, and I can squeeze it back together and get it to close, but when I modified the insides, I had to take out the 4 screws that screw the body together underneath the landing gear here, and I had to take out that structure to make room for the electronic speed controls that sit right under here. So I was kind of hoping I wouldn't have to do that, but I didn't really see any other way of getting around it. So there is kind of a crease here, but I don't know, it doesn't bother me too much. On top of the unit here, I also have a GPS module. I haven't figured out yet how to get this to work. It is configured correctly, but I haven't seen any performance out of it yet, so I'm sure I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, as far as the flight controller that flies this, it is not the original Syma flight controller. I had actually thought about using that flight controller, but there's one big problem with that, is that the original motors that are on here are brushed motors, which use 2 wires, and a brushless motor uses 3 wires, and the way it functions is just completely different. You cannot get it to work the way it is. Now, they do sell brushed to brushless converters that you can buy online. They're kind of hard to find now, and I actually had ordered some and figured that that was how I was going to make this work, was just simply use a converter to change the Syma's motor signal into a standard servo signal that a standard electronic speed control could then pick up and use. Well, I figured if I'm going to go this far and do this much work into it, that if I used a custom flight controller at this point, I was going to get probably better performance in the end, and I have the ability to tune the aircraft so that it flies the way it should. And that's what I ended up doing. The flight controller that is inside here is the NAZE 32, or NAZE 32, however you pronounce that. In the world of quadcopters and custom builds, this is definitely a go-to sort of flight controller. There's a lot of support out there for them. They perform very nicely, and the software that I use to program it with is called Clean Flight. There's another one out there called Base Flight, which is also a good software, but Clean Flight seems to be a little bit better, has better support, and is really user-friendly. Also, if you go on YouTube, there are plenty of videos out there that'll help walk you through the process of setting up the quadcopter and getting it to fly using Clean Flight and the Naze 32. All the videos that I followed are by Paintless 360. He's a guy based out of, I believe, the United Kingdom, and he has literally hours and hours worth of video that will walk you right through it. If you know nothing about these flight controllers like I did when I started, he'll walk you right through it and actually get you up and flying with it. What I use to fly this with the transmitter is the Fly Sky FST6. I got this radio on eBay for about 70 bucks, and it comes with a transmitter and the receiver. Now, I'll go into this a little bit later, but I had picked this unit because, first of all, it's a 6-channel radio, so I've got my 4 channels for the flight controls, and I have 2 auxiliary channels, which really come in handy later on. But I had picked this one because it was cheap, it was computerized, and according to the eBay listing, the receiver that came with it was a PPM receiver. Well, it turns out it's not. Apparently they used to be and they no longer are. So I can get this thing to fly using the receiver as is, but what I ended up buying was a small little converter that changes all the individual servo channels and combines them into one signal, which is your PPM signal, that I can basically wire into the Naze 32, and I'll have more, basically more pins left over on the board later that I can use for other functions. So, but anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's tear into this, and I'll show you exactly what I did. I'm going to have some pictures pop up throughout this video that'll give you a little more time to look at it and explain exactly how I did it. So let's take the top shell off and take a look. Okay, I got all the screws off the top unit here, so I can go ahead and pull this off. Now, at this point, you're going to realize, wow, this looks a lot different inside than it does on my stock Syma. There's a lot going on in here, but let me bring this in and kind of show you how all this works. So the main components that we see inside here are all basically going to replace the original Syma flight controller, which is this piece right here. This is kind of what you would see if you opened yours up. You're going to see this board sitting in here. On this board you have your gyroscopes, accelerometers, the digital compass, and these 4, I believe they're power MOSFET transistors here, basically function as the speed control for the tiny little motors that come stock on this. So first thing I did was rip this thing on out of here, because we're not going to use it anymore. Right here, this is the Naze 32 flight controller. So basically what this does is it takes the signals that come out of your receiver, which is a standard receiver that you could use on a model airplane or whatever, and it basically takes all the signals out of here, brings them into the flight controller. Then the flight controller modifies the signals before it sends them out to the speed controls, which are at each corner here. So it kind of sits in between and allows the aircraft to do what it needs to do to fly. So it's going to balance balance it in midair. It's going to stabilize, add the stabilization that it needs to fly with. But right here, this is the PPM converter that I was talking about. So I take all my individual signals out of my receiver, it goes into here, and it converts it into a 1-wire output, basically, or I should say 3 wires, but it's 1 cable that goes into the Naze 32 here. Now, if I was smart and would have done my research, I would have got a receiver that has a PPM output, and I wouldn't have to use this. So, lesson learned there, but I made it work this way. I decided just to get this because it was like 18 bucks. Rather than having to buy a new receiver, and I didn't know if it was going to work or not, so I just decided that was a easier way to do it. So kind of cool. I basically bought some carbon fiber plate off of Amazon.com. I think it was about 20 or 30 bucks for this stuff, but it's actually really easy to cut and grind the way you need it to be. You can basically make all kinds of custom plates and stuff with it. So I used that to support all the components inside here. At each motor end here, we have the electronic speed controls. These are Emax brand, Simon series 20 amp speed controls. 20 amp might be a little bit excessive for this. I'm not really sure, but I figured bigger would be better than not big enough. Now, the motors. These motors actually are designed to be a replacement for the DJI Phantom 2 or Phantom 3. You can find them on eBay real easy. They're by Ghoul RC. I'm guessing it's some kind of Chinese brand. Actually, yeah, it says made in China. They're 2212 950 kV motors. The nice thing about this motor is that you can use a standard Phantom 3 prop. These are actually aftermarket ones. I do have some of the white stock ones because I actually have two Phantom 3s. But I bought these because they kind of match the aircraft a little bit better, look kind of cool. But they all function the same. The nice thing is they basically just spin on rather than having to use a nut on top. And you can get two props online, usually for like $6 or so. It's kind of an affordable way to go. And these props are sized perfectly for this motor and for this aircraft with the weight that it has. So as far as everything else inside here, underneath this board is the power distribution board. Now I'll put up a picture here in just a second so you can see what that looks like. Basically what that does is takes all the power that comes from the battery and, oh, I guess I'm stuck on a wire here. But basically the battery, two battery wires come in and attach to this power distribution board, and each electronic speed control can take a tap right off of that board. So it's a nice clean way to route all your power. It looks real nice and it does the job. So I'll show you a picture of that right now and we'll come back. My cats were kind of distracting me here, so I had to stop the video and figure out what they were doing. They're kind of just, I guess he's sitting on her, and, well, anyway, let's go back to what we're doing. I don't know what they're going to do, but anyway, so back to the quadcopter here. So now that I showed you how the motors fit in here, you know, they work pretty well. I was a little bit worried that taking away so much material here wasn't going to, basically it wasn't going to be strong enough when I was done, but let me tell you what, I've crashed this thing like at least 3 times since I've converted it, and twice that was falling through a tree. It hit hard enough to knock off some branches that were at least as big as the motors here, and they haven't broke off yet, so it's pretty strong. This flexing that you see here, this pretty much goes away when the top cover goes on. It just kind of locks everything together, and it's pretty sturdy, so I guess I'm happy with it. It seems to work out quite well. So basically the hardest part is going to be figuring out how to get all these components in here. It's just a matter of, you know, shaving away a little bit of plastic here and there to figure out how you're going to mount everything inside. But really the key components again are just, you're going to need the power distribution board where everything can kind of centrally tap off of, so your power feeds all just kind of come off one nice clean board. And you're going to need a flight controller. The NAZ32 is a really commonly used controller. This one is what's called a 10 DOF, or degrees of freedom. So this contains your 3-axis gyro, your 3-axis accelerometer, 3-axis compass, and also a barometer that it uses to determine its altitude. So you could get the more basic NAZ32, I think it's called an acro. Basically it does not have the compass and the barometer. It would work just fine, but I kind of wanted to have everything here that I would need. I'd rather have more features than not enough. So again, you're gonna need a receiver and a radio. You really can choose many different types. So there's a whole lot out there. You can go to a hobby store, you can go on eBay, you can go on Amazon. I would recommend at least a 6-channel. You can get this thing flying with 4 channels, but the 2 extra channels that you have left over are going to allow you to change from flight modes. You can use GPS, switch between your GPS modes with these. So, and that's all done within the NAZ32 here. So I would recommend at least a 6-channel. I guess an 8-channel would be even better. You'd have a little bit more to play with, but as far as your battery type, again, this battery is just massive. I've actually been tempted to fly it with a smaller battery and just see how it works. I'm sure it would work a lot better as far as flight performance, but it really does fly pretty good. So I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it. But this camera I got off Amazon. It's made by a Chinese company. I'm probably gonna really butcher the name, but I think it starts with an X. It's like Shaojing or Xiaozhou, something like that. And it's called the Yi Cam. That's a Y-I. That's Yi. So it's called a Yi Cam. It really, for the price, it's pretty good. It shoots in 1080p. I think, well, I'm shooting at, I think, 30 frames per second, but I know it can do more than that. I don't know how much, but has a nice wide-angle lens, but it also has software built into it that can correct the fisheye effect. So you get a nice wide viewing range, but you get more of a cinematic feel to it. You don't get the fisheye sort of deal. This is a Wi-Fi cam, so it is able to connect to your cell phone, and you can get your first-person view signal off of that. I actually crashed this one day using that, and my theory is that the 2.4 gigahertz signal that this thing's putting out is most likely affecting the reception of my radio, which is also a 2.4 gigahertz system. So I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I really don't use the first-person view anyway. I find it to be kind of shaky and hard to use, but I don't know. I guess I'm kind of spoiled since I have a Phantom 3, so I'm not really used to flying with no gimbal yet, but I suppose you could, though. This little wire that I have tapped out here, this connects to the power distribution board inside to the 5-volt regulated output, and I had originally had this installed to work with a 2D gimbal that would support the camera nice and steady no matter what the aircraft was doing. I'll show you a picture of that right now. Now, the reason I ended up taking that off is because it brought the weight of this aircraft up to around 1,500 grams by the time I was done, which is really heavy. I mean, that's really heavy. I think my Phantom 3 Professional weighs something like 1,350 grams. So 1,500 grams with this big battery, a 2D gimbal, and a camera, and all this other crap on the inside here, it was just too heavy. I decided to remove the gimbal and just fly it as is, but I found that if I tune the software right on the NAZ32, I actually get pretty good steady video out of this. I mean, it's good enough to make it fun. The whole reason I fly this anyway isn't really for the video quality, it's just for the fun of it, so it works just fine as is. Attaching the battery to the aircraft, I used self-adhesive Velcro on the battery end and the aircraft end. This is Velcro, brand Velcro. I would really recommend it. The adhesive on this stuff is just insanely strong. I mean, it really sticks on here good. In addition to the Velcro that attaches it to the aircraft, I've got one of these little Velcro straps. I actually got it at the hardware store, and that loops through the aircraft, and it's kind of a safety strap. I haven't had it fall out yet. Even when I've crashed it a couple times, I've gone through a tree once and it stayed on. So seems to work pretty good. The camera mounts the same way, just a piece of Velcro to the battery, since it's a nice spot to mount the camera from. And again, I have a safety strap here to keep it from wiggling loose or falling off. It really seems to work pretty good. I was trying to figure out how I was going to make this work. If I was going to use a piece of carbon fiber and a bracket and all this other stuff, and it seemed in this case that simpler was better. It works just fine the way it is. It's pretty user friendly, so it does what I need it to do. Now, one quick note about the propellers that I used on here. I said earlier in the video that these are for a Phantom 3. In comparison to my Phantom 3 that we have right here, you can see that the props are basically identical as far as the size. You know, as well they should be. They're made to fit this aircraft. But the stock motors on the Phantom are basically a similar size and output as the ones that I put on my aircraft. And like I said, these are supposedly a direct replacement for them. I actually bought them. I didn't even have that in mind when I bought it. I was literally looking just for the KV rating and to get a motor that had the right size, and I just kind of lucked out that that's how it was. Funny thing is, when I ordered these, I didn't know that, and I was trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get a prop to fit this, because it had the little aluminum nut on the top here, and this shaft size was real goofy. And so, you know, originally I had some props that I was able to drill out and to fit this, but it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't a good setup. And I was sitting there one night staring at the Phantom 3, and I realized, duh, I ordered motors that were for a Phantom 3, so the props should fit. Well, guess what? They do. So that's great. I got nice, strong, cheap props that are the right size, and I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. I mean, these are 9-inch props, which I believe are, I think they're the same size, you know, width size as the original Syma props. The pitch on them seems to be pretty good. The aircraft is pretty quick, but again, they're durable, they're cheap, they fit this motor, so that's kind of a win-win situation, and it works out real good for what I had to do. So let me put this thing back together, and we'll put on a video at the end here of showing it flying, and I'll do a first-person view on the camera here, so you can see what I get to see off of this camera, and we'll also get a video of it in the air, third-person view, so we can actually see how fast it goes and what it looks like when it's flying. So, thanks for watching. Hopefully, there's more of you out there that will be ambitious enough to give this project a try. You know, it's a lot of money to spend on a cheap, I guess, somewhat disposable aircraft like this was, but you know, it's fun. I wouldn't do this as a, you know, as a Phantom 3 replacement. I did this just because it's fun. I wanted something to tinker with, and you know, I like that kind of stuff. So, but so anyway, good luck. Thanks for watching.